The year was 2012. The gaming world was in a state of flux, with blockbuster action titles dominating the sales charts. The Resident Evil series, once the undisputed king of survival horror, had itself pivoted towards action with the massively successful Resident Evil 5. But where could it go from there? Capcom's answer was not to choose a single path, but to take them all. They unveiled Resident Evil 6, a game of breathtaking scope and ambition. It was pitched not merely as the next chapter, but as the ultimate horror entertainment. This was a bold declaration, a promise to deliver something for every type of Resident Evil fan, from the old-school purists to the new generation of action enthusiasts. It was a high-stakes gamble. Capcom's vision was to create a game that was more than just a sequel. It was designed as a colossal tapestry of interwoven stories, each with its own distinct tone, gameplay style, and flavor of fear. The developers set out to blend the atmospheric dread of the series' past with the high-octane thrills of its present. This wasn't about finding a middle ground, it was about creating a spectrum. The plan was to offer 4 full-fledged campaigns, each a game in its own right, that would converge into a single epic narrative. This structural decision was unprecedented for the franchise and signaled Capcom's intent to push the boundaries of what a single game package could offer to its global audience. The goal was clear: to create the biggest Resident Evil game ever made. The development team was massive, reportedly one of the largest in Capcom's history, a testament to the sheer scale of the project. They aimed to satisfy the diverse and sometimes conflicting desires of a fan base that had grown and changed over 16 years. Could they truly deliver a classic horror experience, a military shooter, a frantic chase thriller, and a stealth puzzle adventure all in one? The promise of ultimate horror entertainment set expectations sky high, creating a palpable sense of anticipation and a healthy dose of skepticism. The stage was set for one of the most polarizing and talked about releases in the history of the legendary franchise. As we look back today, on March 2026, we can see how this ambitious blueprint shaped the game's identity. Resident Evil 6 became a sprawling, globe-trotting epic that took players from the zombie-infested streets of Tall Oaks to the war-torn alleys of Lanshang, China. It was a game that dared to be everything at once, a design philosophy that would define its reception and its enduring legacy. It was a statement piece from Capcom, an attempt to prove that horror and action were not mutually exclusive concepts, but two sides of the same terrifying coin. The world was about to see if they could pull it off. For fans who longed for the dark, claustrophobic corridors of the Raccoon City Police Department, Leon S. Kennedy's campaign was designed as a homecoming. Paired with Secret Service agent Helena Harper, Leon's journey begins in the aftermath of a devastating bioterrorist attack in Tall Oaks. The President of the United States is dead, and the town is overrun with the shambling undead. This campaign immediately sets a different tone from its predecessor, Resident Evil 5. The lighting is dim, the environments are tight and oppressive, and the primary threat is the classic, slow-moving zombie. It was a deliberate and calculated effort by Capcom to recapture the spirit of survival horror that first defined the series. The gameplay in Leon's story emphasizes atmosphere and resource management. Ammunition is scarcer, forcing players to make every shot count. The pacing is slower, punctuated by moments of quiet tension and sudden, shocking scares. You find yourself navigating through dark university halls, eerie catacombs, and a fog-drenched cathedral, each location meticulously crafted to evoke a sense of dread and isolation. This was the Resident Evil many fans remembered. The feeling of being vulnerable, of carefully exploring your surroundings, and of never knowing what horrors lurked just beyond the next corner. It was a stark contrast to the sun-drenched, action-packed landscapes of Africa from the previous game. This return to form was more than just aesthetic, it was mechanical. The focus shifts from clearing waves of enemies to simply surviving the encounter. Often, the best strategy is not to fight, but to run, to conserve your precious bullets for a more critical moment. The zombies in this campaign are relentless, but predictable. Their slow, groaning advance a familiar rhythm of terror. This allowed the horror to be more environmental and psychological. The sound design plays a crucial role, with the distant moans of the undead and the creaking of floorboards creating a constant state of unease. Leon's campaign served as a powerful opening statement. The roots of horror were still alive and well. Ultimately, Leon and Helena's segment acts as the game's anchor to its past. It's a direct nod to the legacy of Resident Evil 2, bringing back its star protagonist and placing him in a scenario that feels both new and hauntingly familiar. It successfully reintroduces the core tenets of survival horror: fear, suspense, and vulnerability, before the game expands into its more action-oriented components. For many players, this campaign was the highlight, a demonstration that Capcom had not forgotten what made the series a phenomenon in the first place. It was a dark, terrifying, and masterfully paced journey back into the heart of horror. If Leon's campaign was a descent into darkness, Chris Redfield's was a full frontal assault into the heart of a war zone. This segment of Resident Evil 6 throws players directly onto the front lines of the global fight against bioterrorism. Paired with the young and capable BSAA soldier Piers Nuances, Chris's story is a military-style action shooter through and through. The setting shifts to the fictional Chinese city of Lanxiang, a metropolis under siege by a new and intelligent form of bioorganic weapon, the Javo. Gone are the tight corridors and scarce ammo. In their place are sprawling urban battlefields, explosive set pieces, and an arsenal of heavy-duty firepower. The gameplay here is fast, aggressive, and relentless. It plays like a modern third-person cover shooter, with a heavy emphasis on combat strategy and overwhelming force. Chris and Piers face off against legions of Javo, which are far more dangerous than traditional zombies. These enemies can use weapons, take cover, and communicate with one another, creating intense and dynamic firefights. The Javo also have the ability to mutate on the fly. Shooting an arm might cause it to regrow into a sharp scythe or a hardened shield, forcing players to constantly adapt their tactics. This campaign is all about forward momentum, pushing through enemy lines and surviving chaotic, large-scale battles. The tone is one of desperation and the grim reality of war. Chris is a broken man at the start of his campaign, haunted by the loss of his previous squad. His story is one of revenge and redemption, framed against the backdrop of a city collapsing into chaos. The set pieces are huge in scale, involving everything from fending off massive BOWs to piloting military vehicles. The horror in this campaign is not the fear of the unknown, but the horror of overwhelming odds and the brutal spectacle of war. It's a loud, explosive, and visually stunning experience that pushes the action dial to its absolute maximum, feeling closer to a Michael Bay film than a classic horror game. This shift was a direct continuation of the style established in Resident Evil 5, but amplified to a new extreme. Capcom was clearly targeting the massive audience for military action games, hoping to bring them into the Resident Evil fold. For action fans, Chris's campaign was a thrilling and content-rich experience, offering hours of explosive gunplay and cinematic moments. However, for survival horror purists, it represented a step too far from the series' roots. It was the most divisive part of the game, embodying the very debate over whether Resident Evil should be about horror or action. It was a bold, unapologetic foray into the shooter genre. Positioned squarely between the slow-burn horror of Leon's campaign and the explosive action of Chris's, the story of Jake Muller and Sherry Birkin offers a unique and thrilling blend of styles. Jake, the estranged son of the infamous Albert Wesker, possesses a special blood type that makes him immune to the C virus. Sherry, a returning character from Resident Evil 2, is his government-assigned protector. Their campaign is a globe-trotting adventure defined by one central theme: the chase. They are relentlessly pursued by the Ustanak, a colossal and seemingly indestructible bioorganic weapon, creating a dynamic of cat and mouse that feels both classic and fresh. The gameplay is a hybrid of intense action, desperate escapes, and close-quarters melee combat. Jake is a gifted hand-to-hand fighter, and his mechanics allow for a more physical and aggressive playstyle. This contrasts with Sherry's more standard firearm proficiency, creating a great co-op dynamic. The campaign constantly shifts its pacing. One moment you are gunning down Javo in the streets of Edonia, and the next you are frantically sprinting away from the Ustanak through a collapsing structure. These chase sequences are the heart of the campaign, filled with scripted events and quick-time moments that evoke the feeling of classic chase horror icons like the Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. The Ustanak itself is a fantastic antagonist, a modern take on the persistent stalker enemy. It appears at multiple points throughout the campaign, each encounter requiring a different strategy to survive. Sometimes you must simply run, dodging its attacks and navigating treacherous environments. Other times you are forced to stand and fight, using the environment to your advantage to temporarily disable the creature. This constant threat creates a unique brand of tension that is different from both Leon's atmospheric dread and Chris's combat stress. It is the fear of being hunted by something smarter, stronger, and utterly unstoppable. A feeling that keeps your adrenaline pumping throughout. Jake and Sherry's journey successfully carves out its own identity within the larger game. It marries the big-budget action set pieces of Chris's campaign with the narrative-driven tension of a chase thriller. The story also carries significant weight for the series' lore, bridging the gap between the old generation of villains, Wesker, and the new generation of heroes. It's an exhilarating ride that perfectly encapsulates the hybrid nature of Resident Evil 6. It proves that action and horror can coexist not just in separate campaigns, but within the same gameplay loop, creating an experience that is both explosive and genuinely suspenseful. After completing the 3 main campaigns, players unlock a 4th, secret story starring the enigmatic Ada Wong. This campaign serves as the narrative glue that binds the other 3 together, revealing the hidden machinations behind the global bioterrorist plot. More importantly, it offers yet another distinct gameplay style, one that calls back to the puzzle-solving and solitary exploration of the earliest Resident Evil titles. Playing as Ada is a largely solo experience, and her campaign places a heavy emphasis on stealth, gadgetry, and environmental puzzles. It is honestly a refreshing change of pace from the constant co-op action of the other stories. Ada's gameplay toolset is unique to her. She is equipped with a grappling hook that allows for vertical navigation and quick escapes, opening up level design in interesting ways. She also wields a crossbow with different bolt types, including explosive and gas bolts, which encourages a more tactical and strategic approach to combat. Many sections of her campaign can be navigated using stealth, allowing players to silently take down enemies or bypass them entirely. This focus on quiet infiltration and clever problem-solving provides a stark contrast to the guns-blazing approach of Chris or the frantic escapes of Jake, feeling more like a spy thriller set within the Resident Evil universe. The puzzles in Ada's campaign are more intricate than those found in the other stories. They often require careful observation of the environment and the smart use of her unique gadgets. These moments slow the pace down, encouraging methodical thinking in a way that feels reminiscent of the Spencer Mansion or the RPD station. The horror here is not about being overwhelmed, but about the tension of being a lone operative in a hostile world. Sneaking through a submarine filled with invisible monsters or navigating a trap-filled tomb creates a sense of vulnerability and isolation that is uniquely her own, even for a character as capable as Ada. By weaving through the events of the other campaigns, Ada's story provides crucial context and those aha moments that reframe the entire narrative. You see key events from a new perspective, uncovering the truth behind betrayals and conspiracies. This campaign was a brilliant structural choice by Capcom, serving as both a narrative reward and a gameplay palate cleanser. It demonstrated the full spectrum of their design philosophy, rounding out the package with a thoughtful, puzzle-driven adventure that paid homage to the series' cerebral roots while still feeling modern and action-ready. It was the final crucial piece of the Resident Evil 6 puzzle. While each of the 4 campaigns in Resident Evil 6 boasts a unique style and tone, they're all built upon a shared foundation of new gameplay mechanics. These systems were designed to give players more control and fluidity than ever before, firmly cementing the game's identity as an action-horror hybrid. Perhaps the most significant addition was the ability to move and shoot simultaneously. This was a massive evolution from the tank controls and stationary combat of the past, a feature that fans had been requesting for years. It fundamentally changed the feel of the game, making combat faster, more dynamic, and more aligned with modern third-person shooters. Another game-changing mechanic was the new dodge and slide system. With the press of a button, players could perform a quick dive in any direction to evade an incoming attack, even landing on their back or front to fire from a prone position. This added a layer of acrobatic defense that was crucial for surviving the more chaotic encounters, especially in Chris's and Jake's campaigns. It empowered players, giving them a tool to escape danger that wasn't just running away. This system, combined with a dedicated melee button for context-sensitive physical attacks, made combat a far more fluid and versatile affair than in any previous entry in the franchise. The game also introduced a skill point system that allowed for character customization. By defeating enemies and breaking crates, players collected skill points that could be spent to unlock and equip up to 3 different perks at a time. These skills ranged from increasing firearm damage and defensive capabilities to improving ammo drop rates or melee effectiveness. This RPG-light system encouraged replayability, allowing players to tailor their character's loadout to a specific playstyle or to better tackle a particularly difficult chapter. It added a sense of progression that persisted across all 4 campaigns, rewarding players for their time and effort. Finally, the healing system was revamped. Instead of pausing the game to use a first aid spray, players now managed a number of herbal tablets. Tapping a button would use 1 tablet to restore a block of health, but this could be done on the move, maintaining the flow of combat. Players could even combine herbs on the fly and convert them into their tablet case. While this made healing more accessible, it also drew criticism for removing some of the tension associated with healing in older games. Together, these unified mechanics, fluid movement, dodging, skill upgrades, and on-the-go healing, created a core gameplay loop that was fast, responsive, and honestly, just undeniably action-oriented across the board. A key element that shapes the distinct feel of each campaign in Resident Evil 6 is the enemy design. The game strategically employs 2 primary classes of foes, the classic zombies and the new Javo, to dictate the tone and pace of the horror. Leon's campaign is defined by its use of traditional zombies. These are the slow, shambling, and groaning undead that fans know and love. Their horror comes from their numbers, their relentless advance, and the claustrophobic environments they inhabit. Fighting them is a matter of crowd control and careful aim, as a single headshot can put them down for good. Their presence immediately signals survival horror, forcing a slower, more cautious playstyle. The sound of a zombie's moan echoing down a dark hallway is an iconic part of the Resident Evil experience, and Leon's campaign uses it to masterful effect. The fear they inspire is atmospheric and psychological. They represent a known, almost nostalgic threat, and their inclusion was a deliberate choice to ground this part of the game in the series' past. However, Resident Evil 6 adds a twist. Some zombies are faster, can lunge, and may even wield crude weapons, keeping players on their toes. These creatures are the foundation of traditional horror, turning every corner into a potential threat and every reload into a moment of high tension. In stark contrast, Chris's and Jake's campaigns are dominated by the Javo. These are not mindless undead. They are intelligent, weaponized bioterror assets. The Javo are fast, agile, and tactical. They take cover, communicate with each other, and use firearms, effectively turning combat encounters into intense firefights. Their horror is not one of suspense, but of overwhelming force and unpredictable chaos. They are the perfect antagonists for an action game, challenging players' reflexes and combat skills rather than preying on their psychological fears. They represent the action side of the game's horror action spectrum, demanding an aggressive and mobile playstyle. The most terrifying aspect of the Javo is their chrysalid mutation system. When a Javo sustains heavy damage to a specific body part, it can spontaneously mutate into a more monstrous form. An arm might become a giant blade, legs might transform into insectoid limbs for enhanced mobility, or its head might burst open to reveal a grotesque creature. This means that every firefight is unpredictable. You never knew what you were going to face next, as a standard soldier could transform into a much deadlier monster at any moment. This dynamic mutation system ensured that the action never grew stale and kept the pressure on the player at all times. Capcom's decision to create the multifaceted beast that is Resident Evil 6 was a direct response to the landscape of the games industry in the early 2010s. After the phenomenal commercial success of Resident Evil 5, which sold millions of copies and became the best-selling game in the company's history at the time, the pressure was immense. The data suggested that action-oriented games had a much larger market appeal than niche survival horror titles. To grow the franchise even further, Capcom believed it needed to broaden its appeal. Their solution was not to abandon horror, but to package it alongside the blockbuster action that was proving so popular. This something-for-everyone approach was an incredibly ambitious and risky strategy. The development team aimed to create a game that would satisfy the old guard who missed the suspense of the original trilogy, the action fans who loved the co-op gunplay of Resident Evil 5, and even newcomers who were fans of cinematic, story-driven experiences. By creating 4 distinct campaigns, they hoped to cater to these disparate tastes within a single, massive product. The goal was to unify the divided fan base under one tent, proving that Resident Evil could be many things at once without losing its identity. It was a well-intentioned, logical business decision aimed at maximizing reach and sales. However, upon its release, the critical and fan response was deeply divided, reflecting the game's own fragmented identity. Many praised the sheer volume of content, the high production values, and the enjoyable co-op action. The game's impressive length, offering what was essentially 4 games in one, was seen as incredible value. The ambitious, interwoven narrative and cinematic presentation also received commendations. For players who embraced the action-heavy direction, Resident Evil 6 was a spectacular blockbuster, a thrilling roller coaster ride from start to finish. These players found the variety to be a strength, enjoying the shift in tone between campaigns. On the other side of the coin, a significant portion of the fan base and critics lamented the game's perceived departure from its survival horror roots. The criticism was often aimed at the relentless pace, the over-the-top set pieces, and the focus on action above all else. Many felt that even Leon's campaign, despite its horror aesthetics, was still too linear and action-packed compared to the classics. The game was accused of having an identity crisis, of trying to be too many things at once and mastering none of them. This division created a firestorm of debate online, with fans passionately arguing over the direction of the series and whether Resident Evil 6 was a brilliant evolution or a betrayal of its legacy. Years after its controversial launch, Resident Evil 6 remains one of the most fascinating and debated entries in the entire series. Its legacy is not that of a universally beloved classic or an outright failure, but that of a grand, audacious experiment. It stands as a monument to a specific moment in time when Capcom tried to fuse every facet of the franchise's identity into a single, cohesive whole. By playing through all 4 campaigns, players experience a curated tour of what horror action can mean. From the slow, creeping dread of Leon's journey to the explosive, military chaos of Chris's war, the relentless pursuit in Jake's adventure, and the stealthy intrigue of Ada's mission. The game's hybrid identity is its most defining characteristic. It is a living document of the internal struggle within the franchise, the pull between its atmospheric horror past and its blockbuster action future. While the experiment may not have been a complete success in the eyes of all fans, it was undeniably bold. It showcased the versatility of the Resident Evil universe, proving that its characters and lore could thrive in a variety of gameplay genres. The game's very structure forces players to confront the question of what they want from a Resident Evil game, making it a crucial reference point in any discussion about the series' evolution. The aftermath of Resident Evil 6's reception directly influenced the future of the series. The divided response sent a clear message to Capcom. While the game sold very well, the passionate criticism from the horror fanbase was impossible to ignore. This led the company to pivot back towards a more focused horror experience with the next mainline entry, Resident Evil 7: Biohazard, which was a first-person, intimate, and terrifying game that felt like a direct response to the excesses of its predecessor. In this way, Resident Evil 6 served as a crucial, if painful, learning experience that helped steer the franchise back to its roots, ultimately for the better. Today, Resident Evil 6 is often revisited by players with a new perspective. Divorced from the initial hype and controversy, it can be appreciated for what it is: a gargantuan, content-rich action game with an incredible amount of variety and polish. Its co-op modes remain incredibly fun, and its ambitious narrative structure is still impressive. It may not be the purist's choice for survival horror, but its willingness to be so many things at once makes it a unique and unforgettable chapter in video game history. It is the ultimate horror action hybrid, a sprawling, chaotic, and spectacular testament to Capcom's ambition, and its place in the Resident Evil saga is, and will remain, utterly unique.